Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about The Transit of Venus by Jacqueline Reiner. And as always, I made a DVD cover. I'm very happy with this one because I made their heads pop out of the box. So that's really cool. That's the back and that's the side if you're interested in it. I don't know why not. There you go. So Jacqueline Reiner is a writer that I know about her books more than audio drama. This is the first time I've heard her audio drama. I've read some of her books. I've read some of her books with two from the quick read books. However, this is the first audio drama I've read of hers, so this is interesting. Now, the last time we left off, the Doctor was about to chuck Ian and Barbara off the TARDIS by trying to land in 1963. In actuality, in the TV, this leads into the Reign of Terror. But for some reason, Big Finish decided to make an audio drama set between these two stories. So this is very interesting in our chronological ordering, because it takes place between a cliffhanger. So that's very unusual. But how is the story? Let's find out. The story starts off with Ian and the Doctor getting separated from the rest of the TARDIS crew as they are trapped in the TARDIS, and the Doctor and Ian are on a ship and they've been treated sort of like royalty because the people of the ship believe that they are from Venus, which is why we get the title Transit for Venus. Oh, by the way, that's a massive mishearing because it has nothing to do with Venus. Also, that cover is annoying because Barbara's hardly in it and they make it out as if like she's one of the big characters of the story. Sorry, little tangent there. But anyway, this story sees the Doctor and Ian interact with Jonathan Banks. Now, I don't know much about Jonathan Banks. He's a historical figure who apparently discovered Australia. So that's interesting. And I love it when Doctor Who starts tackling like very obscure history. Like, it's really cool when they tackle like World War II or Marco Polo, but when they do like something that like only a specific amount of people are going to know, I think that's really interesting. However, not all as it seems, as Ian hears that Jonathan Banks is saying this strange stuff, like telling the future, and he seems to know Australia and all the lands as well. And he also seems to be threatening Ian, and it's really, really bizarre. And Ian, he acts very unusual in this story. He seems to be very aggressive, and he tries to plot against Jonathan Banks, thinking he's either like an alien spy, or maybe he's like an evil doppelganger or something. So it's basically Ian's version of the Aztecs, with him sort of trying to change history, even though this one he has good intentions to preserve history. So that's very unusual. However, the Doctor doesn't believe him, obviously, because some of the stuff he says seems very outlandish. There's a great scene here where there's a great bit in this story where Ian goes to the Doctor to tell him about some of the stuff that Jonathan Banks has said, but as he opens the door, he sees that the Doctor's crying because he's missing Susan, and that's a very heartwarming bit. And then Ian decides that he's not going to tell the Doctor yet because the Doctor didn't believe him the first few times he's told him. So he just sits there quietly as both the men can see into each other's faces that they're both missing their companions, the two girls. So I thought that was a very nice scene. So most of the story is just Ian trying to work out what Jonathan Banks is doing and like how does he know about this stuff in the future. He also has a few weird moments. There's a bit where he hears a seagull calling his name and he believes that it's Barbara's soul being into a seagull's body, and then Jonathan Banks shoots the seagull, so that makes Ian think that he's doing this deliberately. There's also a really cool bit where Ian passes out and he has this like weird dream of Barbara being bloody tortured and stuff, and then her soul gets resurrected like a phoenix before Jonathan Banks shoots it. So it has some pretty cool scenes in here. This story is more like a pure historical with a sci-fi element in it, because there's no real villain. I mean, the villain is technically Jonathan Banks, but he's not really. It's mostly to do with Ian's reaction to it and just what the hell is going on. They're near in Australia. I think they discover it, and then Ian hears about Jonathan Banks singing a song, which he couldn't know because it's in the future. And a part of the song is about how they put prisoners to Australia. Now, Ian then mentions to Jonathan Banks, how do you know that song? That song is about this. How do you know that? And he's just like I don't know what you're on about. Jonathan Banks seems to forget all these moments that he can tell the future. So it leads more into what if Ian is going crazy. So he explains it to the doctor what has happened, and the doctor starts laughing. And he tells Ian that he was the one who actually told Jonathan Banks about the prisoners going to Australia. And it turns out that it was Jonathan Banks that actually gave in history that he was the one who did that. So he actually got that idea from Ian, and Ian is preserving history, or technically meddling with it, by giving him this idea. That's very strange, isn't it? Whether it works or not, I don't know. I don't know much about the real life story, but it's a very nice concept. So near the end of the story, they actually spot the TARDIS on an island, and they see Susan and Barbara, and everyone is fine. So what was happening? Well, you see, Barbara was thinking about all these moments, about all the moments, because they can see on the scanner screen. And Susan, thanks to the story, The Sensorites, our last story that we did, she secretly used her telepathic abilities to transport Barbara's thoughts to Ian, and that's how he can hear all that. So it wasn't really a villain. However, it is kind of cool that elements from the previous story are linking in with this one. It makes it feel much more like a whole, even though that does kind of mean that you have to know about the Sensorites, or at least seen it, to understand this story, which I think brings this story down a bit, because it heavily relies on listening to that, watching that story. Overall, I think Jacqueline Reiner has done a pretty good job with this story. William Russell is fantastic. The guy they got to voice, Jonathan Banks, Ian Harren, he does an okay job. Not fantastic, but okay. The Doctor is very nice here, nicely written, being the sort of straight guy to Ian's madness in the story. And there's also some nice scenes where Ian is missing Barbara, and he kind of explains that he needs Barbara to kind of put him back on track, not as in back to find 1963, but back as in he went kind of like off the rails in his story, and he needs Barbara to kind of straighten him out. So there's some nice characterization by Ian here. Overall, I think it's worth listening to if you are doing a sort of marathon, and obviously if you've seen the Sensorites. However, I don't think it's strong enough that it's worth getting it on its own. So there you go. So I hope you enjoyed. I'm sorry this one's a bit short. I've recorded this a few times and I couldn't get a lot of my thoughts out. This is the first time I've listened to this story. So there you go. So I'll see you all next time when we go back into the TV story for the Reign of Terror. I'll see you all that time.